Hello and good day. We have another episode of the Space Curious podcast. We are on episode number 2, and the Space Curious podcast is sponsored by DE Orbit, which is a recruitment company focused in the space segment. Today, I have the lovely Sian O'Shea with me, who is our guest speaker on the subject of all things satellite and communication. So, first thing I would like to say, actually, I nearly forgot, was thank you so much to the audience on LinkedIn who voted for this. Looking at my detailed notes here, we had approximately 59% of people on LinkedIn who voted for Sian to speak about all things satellite, which I guess is your wheelhouse anyway, so it works well.
Worked out well for me, yes.
Exactly, perfect. So, if you can, just a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and how you do it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And really pleased to be here today talking about satellite communications. One of my absolute favourite topics. The other one is talking about my cats, but I don't feel my cats would be great for podcasts. So
You never know.
this was my other choice. Yeah, so I work at Infosys Consulting in the telco division. And of course, satellite communications, just one element of telco. But I think we're going to see a huge rise in satellite communications over the next 5 to 10 years. My background is very much telecoms, worked in the industry for 17 years. And I think it's such a great industry. It's always changing and it's such a force for good.
Indeed, absolutely love it. So, the first topic I've got here is the future of satellite communication. So, we're just going to do a quick deep dive. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to keep it live. We're going to have some fun. And hopefully, the viewers of this will see the technology is moving at a fast pace. And it's something that not you don't just have to be a techie to get into, because at the end of the day, we're all using this without even knowing we're using this. And hopefully, this will give the viewers some sort of understanding on why this is so important to everyone, not just the people what they think in the space community. The future of space communications, just focus on that subject at the moment. What is, or how should I rephrase that? What is satellite communications? From when someone says satellite communications, if you can give a brief overview on what someone like me, a novice, someone that's still learning, what is the meaning of satellite communications?
That is a great question. And one of my favourite questions to people is, can you explain this to me as though I'm 5?
Yeah.
I really like simple layman explanations. So thinking about that and the communication of satellite comms. So think of the beer Heineken reaches the parts of the beers cannot reach. I'm not a beer fan, but I think it's a good analogy
Yeah.
in that if you think about traditional telecommunications, there are limitations limited by signal, limited by distance, limited by coverage. And traditional telecommunications can't reach everywhere. So, for example, if you live out in a really rural area, historically, you may well have had quite poor broadband service. So think back to old dial-up speeds. You may have had really either poor quality or slow speeds, not a great service. And as you probably all know, broadband communication is absolutely critical today. So we don't want whole communication processes where people are really hindered by the speed or the coverage.
Yes.
So what satellite comms gives us and what it does, essentially there's a ground station which submits a signal, transmits up to a satellite. The satellite then amplifies that signal and then transmits it back, and that signal can reach pretty much anywhere. Depending on the satellites and the provider, there's almost 100% coverage through satellite communications. So you could be out in a really rural location. You could, for example, be a fisherman in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. You could be on an aeroplane. You could be out in the military and need really super secure specialized comms. But whatever your use case, wherever you are, there is a satellite communication service to cover it.
Lovely explanation. And you've just hit a bit of a segue there, when we get back onto topic at the moment, because you mentioned the military. And I guess people who are for or against the military, one thing that we fortunately can thank them for is things like satellite communications, because apparently, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm a novice at this, that's where the first satellite sat nav came from.
Absolutely Yes. Yeah. Originally it came from the RAF. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and then it got filtered down to what we use as modern day communications. So this is so important that when top grade technology normally is used by the military, and I'll use an example like you did with Heineken the beer, but I'm going to talk about F1, Formula One.
Yep.
So when you've got, for example, stability control system for your car, most of these systems, etc., were used in Formula One, and then it got filtered down into what we call and use the everyday motor car. So this is the importance of satellite communications, because people always think, oh, why are these big, huge military bases, companies using this information? Whether you use it good for bad, the benefit that comes out of it is we get to use that technology, and it helps us with our modern day life. Back to the topic, but yeah, I just wanted to have that conversation because it's really interesting, because people think, where did it come from? Why was it used?
Yeah, and it's evolved so much. I think it's really interesting to look at the origins of it and actually how
Yeah,
it went from being quite niche to loathe him. Thanks to Elon Musk, it's now much more mainstream, much
yeah,
more well known, and the technology, the use cases, the markets are all evolving so quickly.
yeah. And on that subject, how's satellite communication impacting us on a daily life, do you think? Just on a from 10 years ago to now, what have you seen that is impacting us for
Yeah,
the better?
and I think it's so much a force for good. So, for example, thinking about charities and NGOs dealing with, and unfortunately, we live in really turbulent times. So, dealing with conflict, war, famine, climate change, natural disasters. If you think about all those organizations having to really organize and mobilize and respond quickly to disasters, satellite comms are absolutely essential to enable them to communicate where actually normal communications wouldn't work, to
Yes.
get logistically to be able to actually get essential supplies to disaster zones. From a climate change point of view, satellite comms are really essential in so many ways, from climate monitoring to actually helping understand the impact of different areas of climate change to green technology. If you think about the maritime industry, vital industry, huge industry, unfortunately, fuel emissions, big issue. And quite rightly, the big shipping companies are being targeted with actually reducing their impact on the environment. And satellite comms are really key to actually monitoring routes, rerouting ships, reducing fuel emissions, and playing a really vital role in green technology. And I think really we've only just seen the start of that. The potential for green
Yeah.
tech through
Yeah.
satellite comms is huge.
Yeah, definitely, because you've answered my next question, which was what are the positive impacts and how is it helping? So that is phenomenal. Obviously, with agriculture, with navigation for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
huge tankers, because we always say, why do we need these tankers? But everyone that owns a car, a refrigerator, a laptop, any sort of technology, we're all using it. So no one can, this is my personal opinion, no one can be saying that we don't need these big oil tankers, we don't need X and Y to ship products over, because we're all,
You're all
unfortunately,
consumers. Yeah,
yeah, we're all
exactly that.
unless the only people that can speak ill against it is are the people that obviously live in a fully sustained home that's in the wilderness with no technology.
And even if people living off grid, actually, they need essential comms. A satellite phone for emergencies still provides a vital
There we
service.
go. Yeah, you still, yeah, so true. You still need that sat phone when you're watching these movies and someone's in the
Yeah.
wilderness, and they always say, "Oh yeah, we need a sat phone. Get the sat phone." So yeah, it's so true. From hiking
Yeah.
to extreme mountain climbing, we all those people will have some sort of communication to get in contact with the rescue team in the
Exactly.
unlikely event of an accident. So
And
it's like
increasingly so. Yeah.
these little things that we take for granted that it would be helped by satellite communications. So yeah, so the next thing is, again, you have explained this again, but explain it if you can re-explain it to me, because I'm learning as we go. I'm a novice here. I'm a student learning about this industry. So explain to me again, like the satellite communication side, as I'm a 10-year-old. How would you describe it in a quick 20 seconds, 25 seconds? What is it? It's obviously because when people think about a satellite, they just think of it as just like this thing that orbiting. But
Yes,
what's the nuts and bolts of it? How
and
did
it's a
it?
great question because actually it's evolving, it's changing.
Yeah,
Even the whole technology and the types of orbits, that has all changed in recent years.
yeah,
So there are different types of satellites in different orbits, and people may well have heard of Leo because
yeah,
that's Musk's satellite, which
yeah,
is probably the most well known. So Leo orbit, essentially satellites in a lower orbit, which means actually they're easier to launch. There's a proliferation of Leo satellites. They move really quickly and they give great coverage, great speeds. Essentially, a signal is transmitted from a ground station to the satellite, which then boosts that signal and can transmit that signal back. And from a coverage point of view, you it's essentially if you're on a plane, out at sea, in a really remote location, or for example, in so many use cases, you could be on a driverless train that needs really reliable monitoring. That could be using satellite communications. So essentially anywhere where you wouldn't necessarily always get coverage or you want that guarantee of always on connectivity, satellite
mm,
communications can be used to deliver that.
yeah, yeah. So I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate just for the listener who's thinking, right, okay, I just want a break from it.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I don't mind. I can't get connection. What would you say to people that say that kind of thing? We don't need it everywhere.
Of course, and totally get that. I think everyone benefits from a digital detox sometimes and actually
Yeah,
stop doom scrolling, stop checking your emails.
yeah,
But I think that the flip side of that is the case for good. And actually, we're seeing the rise of D2D, direct to device, which actually is providing satellite connectivity through a traditional mobile handset. And what that means is actually, in terms of, for example, if you need to contact the emergency services or you need to send an emergency SMS, you will have that functionality. You don't need a specialized satellite phone. It will actually be in your standard handset. And
wow.
yeah, and there's nothing to say, of course, appreciate people don't want to be on their phones all the time, but actually imagine the reassurance of knowing that even if you haven't got standard mobile coverage, you can rely on satellite comms to make
Mhm.
that emergency call or send that critical
Yeah,
text message. And it
yeah,
is really about that, the
yeah,
reliability and the reassurance. And whenever
yeah.
I'm watching a horror film and somebody needs to make a call and they've got no signal, I always think, well, very soon they would have.
Exactly, yeah. You're going to be the person that's going to be debunking these horror movies. Well,
I always
I'm the
spoil
cell
saying
service.
that. Yeah,
And you'll be saying, no, you should be able to cell service because now the year that this was filmed was this year. So
exactly.
I love it. I love it. And I guess as well, what you're talking about, the connectivity, and we'll probably get into this a bit further on the conversation as well. I guess the reason why everything's moving at a faster pace that we believe is because that's who we are as human beings, right? Because back in the day before we had a car, where we obviously we'd had horses, and the answer to getting somewhere faster was getting a faster horse.
Yes, yeah.
So could you imagine now if we were still having a horse to get to a place, we won't get to anywhere fast at all. So everyone just needs to think about what happened when I guess it was Henry Ford with the Model T car when that was introduced, and then evolution just kicked in, and there was so many new car manufacturing companies that all came together. I think in America alone there were hundreds of car manufacturers. Obviously, the wars and the integration and the buyouts and stuff, there are only a handful now. But I guess this is, if you agree or disagree, let me know. I guess this is what's happening at the moment. It's like the car industrial revolution when the first car's been made, and now everyone's on the satellite game. And I guess the strongest will survive, right?
100%. And I think the use cases are evolving. Also, customer expectations are evolving. People demand always on connectivity now. And it's increasingly, for example, your example of the car industry was a great one because now if somebody's buying a new car, they increasingly expect to have always on connectivity for remote diagnostics, for GPS, for predictive analytics, actually telling
Yeah,
them their car needs a service.
yeah,
And that is increasingly delivered through satellite communications.
yeah.
So it's not just the evolutionation of the satcoms industry. It's about actually we're seeing satcoms really entering into pretty much every other industry,
Mm,
drive an improved customer experience. And
yeah.
actually also it benefits these companies because it will help them potentially have more value add services and can really be a differentiator for them.
Yeah. It's what it's. I guess it's a bit going down like the rabbit hole when you look into satellite. You just think, oh, what's this? Why do we need this thing floating around Earth, causing more space junk? But then when you look into the detail and you start to go into it a bit more, it just spreads and spreads the amount we depend and rely on it and we use it on a daily basis. And I guess it's always that thing that's first world problems. We like to complain about everything, but it's okay, well, let's take away satellite communications, let's take away everything. Your sat nav, your
The
phone, Google
impact,
Maps.
yeah,
Yeah, and
so
then
wide ranging.
see actually what happens. We'll be crying for it within, I would give it 30 minutes.
Complete, and especially as it becomes more works, for example,
Yeah,
it's becoming much more much more widely integrated into other telcos as well. So I think the
yeah,
impact and the dependency is only going to increase.
yeah.
The use cases, and for everything from monitoring and tracking fleets of whales, so actually to really help with environmental and maritime life,
Mm.
to providing essential services, to tracking and cargo monitoring. The use cases are really wide ranging.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned that about tracking whales as well. I had a really interesting conversation because, as I said, I'm a student, so I'm just going around calling experts like you and just speaking and just give me some more information. And it was really interesting what he said because he said that the company that he works for, I won't name the company, but they were tracking illegal poachers
Yeah, yeah,
in the sea. I can't remember what they were fishing, so I can't remember what they were fishing for, but they were in waters that they shouldn't be, and obviously taking species that are being overfished. So, for a protection point of view for our wildlife, for the water, it's fantastic. But it's like anything. Everything can be used for good. It can be used for
of
bad.
course, yeah.
We just need to be respectful, mindful, and it needs to be governed in the right way, not in the corrupt way. Fingers crossed, it will continue to do more good than the
Exactly
other
that.
side.
And I think from a governance point of view and regulation, I'd say the more traditional telco industry is quite rightly highly regulated. There's a lot of governance, there's a lot of compliance. I think because satellite communications has evolved so quickly, the regulatory side of it perhaps needs to catch up. We're going to
Mm,
see more of that, particularly with increased demand on spectrum and new technologies. There's going to be a need to have that really robust governance and regulatory framework in place.
yeah, and you mentioned the man himself, the Musk.
I could not
Um,
mention it, especially with the SpaceX IPO recently. Yeah.
Yeah, which is just crazy. So I get one question I've got to you is why Starlink has changed the industry. So from your perspective, why have they or how have they changed the industry?
Oh, I could wax lyrical about this, but I'll try. I'll try to keep concise on it. So, firstly, it has made satellite comms much more recognizable to people. A few years ago, if you mentioned satellite communications, you'd probably have got a lot of blank faces from people. Musk, from a marketing perspective, has done a great job of making it much more for people much more aware of it. It's been an educational
Yeah,
piece.
he's made it a bit sexy.
He has. From a marketing point of view, he's done a really good job.
Yeah,
And it's really shaken up the industry in a number of ways. Firstly, Leo, from a technology and a commercial point of view, has changed the model. So, Leo, from a pricing perspective, has really enabled Musk to go out and do a Leo land grab. He's
mm,
really conquered the consumer market and has really covered that base. So he has made it much more accessible to ordinary consumers as opposed to just large enterprises, governments, and corporations. And he's really increased the range of use cases. And I think it's a question that really is on the mind of a lot of the other satcoms companies now, how to compete with Musk. And I think with that in mind and how it's changed the industry, it's forced those more legacy players to change. For
yeah,
example, legacy players or some of the legacy players traditionally relied on geo. They are
yeah.
now moving towards a much more hybrid model using LEO, GEO, and mesh networks. And that's better from a consumer
Help
point of
me and the
view.
listeners with Geo.
Yes, too much jargon. Yes, so LEO, low Earth orbit, GEO, geostationary satellites. Essentially, in layman terms, they are higher up, higher from the Earth. One satellite can provide a lot more coverage, but generally they take a lot longer to launch. So it could take years to launch a geo satellite, whereas you look at Musk, is launching thousands of satellites really quickly. So
Yeah,
different coverage, different types of satellites, different pricing structure, good for different use cases. But I think Leo has made satellite communications much more widestream and forced the more legacy players to look at their technology, their pricing model, and how to really make things a differentiator. So is it customer experience? Is it coverage? Is it reliability? Is it flexibility? Is it all of the
Mm,
above? But I
mm.
think all of those considerations can only be a good thing from a consumer point of view.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When people mention Geo, I was saying, don't let the film Geostorm put you off. Don't know if you've seen it or not. Gerard Butler. For anyone that hasn't seen Geo, it's a film with Gerard Butler, the actor, and it's about satellites and they protect the Earth, let's just say, but then someone uses it there advantage to destroy some cities, countries in some aspects. But Hollywood loves to give the disastrous side of it.
Bit of
What?
artistic license with the films, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And if you have seen it, if you're not, I bet you no, that will happen.
That always rotates me in films, though. It's like you just have to suspend your disbelief and go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Literally, DreamWorks and stuff like that. They just make everything up for the sake of entertainment, and that's what they're going. So yeah, I've segued gone off topic. So yeah, so obviously with Musk, he's obviously changed the game. He's got other players thinking a lot differently. But I guess that the question is, can anyone actually compete with someone who is now being labeled as the first trillionaire?
That is a great question. Actually, whilst there's been a huge amount of noise and publicity around SpaceX, I don't know that it's been that widely publicized. Actually, a huge percentage of their revenue comes from Starlink. Actually,
Yes,
Starlink is the cash cow, that is the money
yes.
maker, and that's where the money is. And he's actually got a really good model there. In terms of competing, I think absolutely other players can compete. It's about knowing where to play in the market. So, for
Mm.
example, Musk has really gone hard after the consumer base and done a big Leo land grab. If you look at Amazon, I think Amazon absolutely one to watch. A lot of investment there. Also, from an enterprise point of view, they've got a
Help
huge
the viewers out
advantage.
with Amazon. So Amazon is blue.
Amazon Kuiper, though it's
Okay.
Amazon Leo now.
Oh, Amazon.
And
Okay, yeah.
I think just my prediction, I think that's a really good one to watch.
Okay.
They've got the advantage of they can really target enterprises because they've got Amazon AWS, they've got
Yeah.
APIs, they can integrate really easily, offer that scalability, really trusted brand. So where Musk has gone hard after the consumer base, Amazon may look to play in quite a different market with the large enterprises. You've also got the legacy players who have had to adapt their model, but actually, for example, they have got the credibility. And you're thinking about governments and the military, they want that credibility. They want those
Yes.
tried, tested, trusted brands. They've got the long contracts with them. So I think there's definitely still a place for them to play. And they have
Mhm.
adapted really well, both in terms of the commercial model, but also looking at the technology in a more hybrid model.
Yeah.
And then also, you think with all the turbulence in the world, there's a whole question around data sovereignty. Do governments or do even large organizations, would they prefer to have a satellite comms company that's European, that's US based? There's a whole host of new considerations now as well.
Yeah. Big problems and now big solutions are going to have to come into play because obviously normally the US normally take the lion's share, but obviously you've got Japan, you've got Asia as well. So there's going to be that kind of, hopefully, it's going to be positive competition. Then we've got Europe as well coming aboard. For me, it seems, and obviously, my parents are born in Africa, and obviously, I still consider myself as African descent. It seems like the countries in Africa, correct me if I'm wrong, seem like they're way behind, or the public, the media's not talking about what's going on in that part of the world. Have you seen any companies that are coming up in Africa at
That
all, or
that
is it?
that is changing. You're absolutely right in terms of the speed, but satellite comms are becoming more prominent there, and I think that's a market where we're going to see a lot more satellite communications, and I
Hmm.
suspect we'll see a lot more from Musk in that space.
Yeah, yeah, because I guess just go the demographic and the population as well. Because if you just take something like, I can't remember the numbers, but for example, Nigeria, 100 million, maybe more, 200 million people just in that location.
Yeah, yeah.
So from a business profitability point of view, it would be
100%,
very
yeah.
lucrative.
Okay,
So
yeah, yeah. And very different to traditional broadband where it's a saturated market. Everyone's pretty much everyone's got broadband. It's hard to
Yeah,
attract new broadband customers. You only actually
yeah,
satellite comms in rural areas, a whole untapped market.
yeah. So that's another thing that you just sparks a question. So is it still going to be called broadband?
So it's hard to predict. And I think one of the challenges in the satellite communications
Yeah.
industry is the jargon, and there are a lot of sort of quite cool
Mm.
product names.
Yeah.
And I think from a customer point of view, it'd be great if some of the companies looked at how can they actually make the product names and product catalog more accessible and more
Yeah.
meaningful to customers. But yeah, I think there will be more change, certainly more products coming onto the market.
Yeah.
And a lot of the satellite comms companies looking at value added services as well. So actually, what are customers prepared to pay a premium for? We know cybersecurity, but what does that look like
Yes.
in terms of different levels of encryption? It'll vary by industry, by geography, and so on. So actually, I think the product range and monetization and introducing more value add services will definitely change.
Indeed. And we've touched on it quite a few times, connectivity. I'm really interested, and again, you mentioned it about trains as well, driverless trains. My, not my prediction, my observation is the reason why these satellites are being launched at a tremendous rate is because we will need that data, that technology, that power to literally speak to all the driverless technology that we're going to have, from cars to trains to delivery trucks to everything and everything you can think of. Is that, do you think that's the case of it? Because we
Yeah,
need,
absolutely. That is definitely the direction it's going in. There's more of a demand now for increased coverage. And actually, yeah, from driverless trains to cargo tracking, in particular in high risk areas, to drones, to deliveries,
yeah,
and anywhere where actually you either want satellite connectivity because normal communications don't work there, or actually, in a lot
yeah,
of cases, providers want that comms as a backup. So actually, if
yeah.
normal communications fail, they can rely on satellite comms to kick into place.
And again, I'm gonna bring cars into the equation
Yeah.
because I love cars, by the way. If you didn't
Got that
already, yeah.
impression, yeah.
So people always say, and this is my personal response to it, people always say, why do we need cars that can go 200 mile an hour, 250 mile an hour, close to 300 mile an hour? My personal thought is we will soon, in our lifetime, have high speed highways where the cars will be automatic in terms of driverless, autonomous, and they will be driving at speed, normal speeds. So that'll be our new normal at 250 miles an hour on a, you just drive onto a ramp or onto what would be called a future motorway, and then everything autonomous takes over, and the car will be propelled to consistently go at 250 mile an hour. And that's my prediction. So, what are your thoughts? Have you thought about that before, or
Yeah, absolutely. And I think satellite comms are going to be integral to that in terms of enabling those more sort of autonomous vehicles, the security side of it, the monitoring and alerting. I think we're going to see so much seamless integration thanks to satellite comms
mm,
empowering companies to do things that they never actually thought were possible. And particularly in terms of, can't discuss it without mentioning AI. Actually,
yeah,
that network monitoring, that seamless switching, that connectivity, actually AI is going to, of course, help accelerate that as well.
yeah, indeed, indeed. So, right, okay, so we've talked about the rural side of it. We've talked about emerging technologies. Did we, again, correct me if we spoke about this, the future relationship between terrestrial and satellite networks?
I'd love to talk about that a bit more because I think that's going to change drastically as well,
Yeah.
in that it's going to become the norm for mobile operators and non-satellite telcos to integrate satellite comms as part of their solution. It's going to be the only way they can actually offer that always on connectivity, be it broadband, be it through a mobile device. It'll be the solution for that. Scale up their offer to create whole new networks of their own. There will be
Yeah.
work to be done to make sure their networks are
Mm,
actually satellite comms ready, but it
yeah.
makes it much more scalable,
Yeah.
much more manageable, and much more reliable.
And I guess it's the kind of the do or die kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
If they if the mobile operators do not get on with the times and literally innovate, then
yeah,
they'll
yeah.
be gone, right? Again, an example, research, yeah, RAM, Research in Motion, who were
Mm.
the owners of BlackBerry. So BlackBerry wouldn't move with the times. They said that no one would want a phone with a full screen. You have to have a keyboard on it. You have to have a physical button. So yeah, the company Research in Motion, who I think they're the parent company of BlackBerry, they went under. Same thing with Blockbuster. They were laughing
Yes,
at,
I was about to say Blockbuster not
yeah,
wanting to buy Netflix. Yeah.
they were laughing at Netflix. They
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
move with the times, and they went. So I guess a lot because there's AI involved now. Some executive who is still in their ways, they can easily just have a sneak and go into AI, and they'll say, "No, you need to do this, or your business is going to go under." So they can do the research themselves as well to think, right, okay, we definitely need to move the time. So I see a massive shift in the mobile telco industry. And I think there are going to be some unicorns that are going to be coming through in the next 5 years due to this shift.
Yes.
So as we're speaking now, that there are startups in the cupboard,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
literally thinking, right, we're onto something and we can jump onto this. Because the great thing when there's a technology explosion is it creates more businesses.
Brilliant.
But then the other side is a lot of other business collapse, but mainly that's because they did not want to change and they thought
Yes,
they
yeah.
could ride out that storm because they've done it so
Missed the
many
boat.
times.
Technology because of all the maritime sector, but we're already seeing strong partnerships between mobile operators and satellite comms companies and handset providers. But it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of partnerships are forged over the coming years. But I think
Yeah.
it's early adopters now that are really going to make serious inroads into it and capture that customer base.
Yeah, yeah. So we spoke about, just to mindful of time, we spoke about cyber security, but just to quickly go on to that,
Yeah,
the risks, the challenges.
yes. It's a fascinating one because satellite comms, like any form of communication or any technology, is exposed to cybersecurity risks. Unfortunately, it is inevitable. And in this day and age, warfare isn't traditional warfare as much now, it is cyber warfare. So it is an issue. I think it presents quite different and unique risks for satellite communications, though. For example, a lot of satellites have quite a long lifespan. They're expected to last for 10 to 20 years. So you can imagine in that time, actually, cybersecurity changes, encryption standards change, new risks are introduced. So it's really critical to think of ways of actually managing that, be it through really simple remote software updates or other technical solutions to mean actually to unnecessary vulnerabilities and
Yeah,
everything from ground station infrastructure, network management, having a really zero trust architecture and policy to make sure risk is minimized. So I think whilst technology introduces the vulnerabilities, so to mitigating those through really robust monitoring architecture, but
yeah.
also really staying up to date and being really vigilant about new cybersecurity risks.
Yeah. And the listeners of this will probably think, right, okay, we're talking about all these satellites. You've just mentioned that the lifetime of a satellite is 10 years. So to help the audience, where does a satellite go after 10
This
years?
is a
What actually
really
happens?
good question. Actually, it leads on to something that I like talking about in terms of the environmental impact. And I think that's something where we need to do more work. So actually, end of life satellites, they have to be decommissioned in a way that's not going to cause huge amount of debris. Also, with the proliferation of satellites in orbit, there is
Yeah.
more risk of satellite collision and more debris. And even satellite launches, of course, you can imagine huge amount of fuel emission, not a great carbon footprint. So actually, I don't have the answer right now, but there's a lot of work being done in this space, particularly by the ESA, European Space Agency, looking at
Mm,
actually how can the environmental impact be managed, what technical solutions are there, what green
yeah.
technology is there to reduce
Yeah.
those emissions and also reduce any negative impact from satellites on the environment.
Yeah, because literally when they launch a satellite, right, for the rockets alone, they're shooting a huge amounts of water
Yeah,
over the is it over the boosters or around the boosters to for the cooling?
yeah.
What is happening to that water? Is it contaminated? Does it get recycled? Does it turn to unicorn fairy dust? Like,
And that is part of the issue for all the positive impacts of satellite communications in monitoring and reducing fuel emissions and actually being really integral to monitoring climate change. It does generate a negative impact as well in terms of other emissions and a risk in orbit and space. And I think that on a positive side, there is more work being done. There's government investment in that now, the ESA investigating in it. And you've also got a lot of innovation going on where panels and think tanks are looking at how to use satellites to actually address
Mm,
emerging climate change issues.
yeah.
But I think there's a lot more work to be done in that space and a lot we don't necessarily know enough about
Indeed.
yet.
Indeed. And I guess it's just like the again, car, the internal combustion engine, when it was first when it was first made, it was, well, in fact, there's a bit of a story about that because the engine was meant to run on hemp and
Wow, going to
other,
school
like,
there, I did not know that.
yeah. But obviously, with the way the world is, oil,
Yeah.
petroleum made money. So yeah, that was a diesel engine, was meant to run on hemp, but that's a completely different story. But what this point I was trying to get is the old version of the engines weren't as economical to run, but now the engines that we use are very economical, and the way that we produce the blocks, the way that we produce the engines is more obviously, and not, it's still challenges there. And I think that's going to be the same thing with anything. It's just technology
Yeah.
and learning how to do it better, how to get better materials, and just making sure we are more focused, or a bit more focus on getting it done right and properly for the environment. This is profit first, and then we'll see what happens afterwards. Um,
100%. Yeah. And the whole
so
supply chain piece is key in terms of actually putting demands on suppliers in the process to have green credentials, but also it'll help because a lot of satellite components are quite niche. They're quite hard to obtain. There's a long wait list. So actually
yeah,
looking at solutions to address that.
yeah. So yes, we are running out of time. So I do, sorry, need to move on. So we talked about challenges of the race industry growth. So the biggest opportunities in the market right
Oh,
now.
that is a really good question. I'd say it really depends the satcoms company. So, for example, for Musk, he's actively targeting the consumer base. I would say for Amazon, there's a huge amount in the enterprise space, given their great infrastructure and the scalability of it. I think looking at solutions to climate change issues, looking at how to actually mitigate some of the problems around cybersecurity and conflict in the world, and I think a whole host of emerging use cases, really.
Exactly. Phenomenal. In fact, you've just so much information. So much you need to come back onto this
What
show.
to, definitely,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I'm just blown away by the amount of information that you hold, you understand, and how simple you explain it back to myself and obviously the viewers out there will be listening as well. So I appreciate you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. And the great thing is, there's always more to learn because it evolves so
Exactly.
quickly. You're never going
Yeah.
to know everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the career opportunities for the next
Yes.
generation. Obviously, I'm a recruiter, so I want to quickly just talk about
Of
the
course.
career opportunities for the next
Oh, yeah.
generation. Where do you see like in this kind of area that we're talking about?
Yeah.
What could they be getting into? Why should they get into it?
Oh, so many opportunities. I think for me, one of the key messages, if I had to land one message regarding this, is actually the breadth of opportunity. So, yes, of course, the satellite comms industry and the wider space industry needs great technical knowledge, needs software engineers, network engineers, specialists to design antenna, but it's much wider than that. So, people shouldn't be constrained by thinking, actually, if I'm not from a technology background, I'm not an engineer, it's not for me. If you think about it, it's as important to have people in those commercial roles. Actually, how can
Yes.
satellite comms be monetized? That's a really key
Yes.
question. Program management. You think about the complexity in building a ground station or managing a satellite launch or even launching new products. It needs really great program management skills.
Yes.
And it also benefits, I think, from great data analysts and people who can actually use the insights coming from satellite monitoring to interpret that wealth of data to really actionable business outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think the final one is, yes, it can be a technical industry. And that's why people like great business analysts who can bridge that gap between the technology and the business solutions can also play a really pivotal role. So, in a nutshell, I think huge range of roles. Don't be constrained by thinking you have to necessarily be from a technology background.
Lovely, and I love it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. So the first
I'll
thing
press the
that
buzzer.
yeah, I've got a gong by its over there.
If it's a
I
bad
literally
answer,
have.
you can play the gong.
Yeah. So one company everyone should be watching or looking out for.
Oh, I have to say Starlink. because so much change going on. But I'd also say Amazon, absolutely one to watch. I think we're going to see a lot from them in this, no pun intended, space.
Cool. Perfect. One underrated technology.
That is a good question. I would say not so much a technology, but I think hybrid networks, we're going to see a lot more from hybrid networks. And actually, it's not just about having one solution, it's about having a mesh network that combines the best of hybrid.
Love it. Fantastic. Biggest myth about the space industry.
I think going back to the earlier point, I think there's a myth that you have to be very technical or very network focused. Actually, it needs people with a whole range of different skills.
Perfect. Love it. Most exciting trend in satellite communications.
I think for me, just from a personal point of view, because I'm quite interested in the environment, I think it's the role satellite communications can play in solving current and emerging environmental issues.
Love it. Fantastic. And what comes to your mind when I say moon?
Landing,
What comes to your mind when I say Mars?
exploration,
What comes to your mind when I say Earth orbit?
changing.
Love it. Fantastic. One prediction for the next decade.
Oh, that is a good one. I think we will see far more autonomous vehicles and solutions. I think the role of humans will change drastically. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I just think technology is going to play a more pivotal role.
Indeed, it will do. Sian, O'Shea, you have been absolutely fantastic. Is there anything that I have not covered that you wanted to quickly mention before we sign off?
I think we've covered a great range. I think just going back to the earlier point about skill set, also diversity, so important. I think, again, like a lot of technology industries, it can be seen as being quite male dominated. That isn't really changing, but love to see more
Yeah,
of that. I think there's so
right.
much that can be done, and happy to maybe it's a whole other podcast in itself, really. But I think that's an interesting one to consider. How can we actually
Exactly.
make it more diverse and inclusive? And I think there's real potential
Yeah.
there.
And I think you speaking on this podcast, and hopefully it does the rounds, and more people who look like you, females, young teenagers that say, "Oh, right, okay, Sean Shay, she's doing it. So if she's doing it, let me learn a bit more." So on that subject, if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way for people to reach you, to have a conversation and to
Yeah,
just
very happy, just even if it's just a quick catch up or a coffee or just to talk about my experience, anything like that would be great. Yeah, just message me on LinkedIn and happy to take
right?
the discussion from there. Yeah.
Right, so you've heard it here, Shan O'Shea on LinkedIn. If you want to speak with her about satellites, about technology in
All my
this
cats.
space, yeah,
Any of the above.
all your wonderful cats, you're an absolute delight. Because I remember when the first time I sent a LinkedIn message to you, you were nothing but helpful. You're nothing but positive, joy. And I need to say this as well because when I was struggling and trying to learn more things about the companies around the not just in the UK but around the world. Shana's got a vast knowledge, so she was like saying to me, "What about this company? Oh, what about that company? Or this company hiring? Oh, check this article out. Oh, check this podcast out." So
I
thank
love
you.
throwing the information at people.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you so much because I truly mean this that there's not a lot of people out there who are just giving without expecting anything back. So that's exactly who you are, and I
Oh,
really do
thank you. We've always
appreciate
had
it.
such great discussions. Yeah, really good to connect.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. Please share this podcast, please like it, and we will see you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Hopefully see you soon for part 2.
Definitely.
Thanks. Bye bye.